All right, so we're going to talk about fractional exponents. Take a look at this example right here. It says 144 to the half power. We're going to discuss what that half power means. According to the definition of fractional exponents, it says the exponent's denominator, the 2, is the root. Okay. The exponent's numerator, which happens to be 1 here, is the power of the base inside the root. And then I have a little note here that we're going to talk about in just a second. So let's go back over to this. It says the exponent's denominator is the root. Well, we have 2. We know 2 as a square root. A square root. And then it says the exponent's numerator is the power of the base inside the root. So that would be 144. And it says to the first power. Well, we know anything to the first power is just the number itself. So this really means the square root of 144. So what is the square root of 144? The square root of 144 is 12. So let's look at the next one. It says 8 to the half power. So again, following the directions, the 2 would be the square root. I'm going to circle these both in blue so you can kind of see where I'm going. And the numerator is the power of the base inside the root. So it would be 8 to the first power. Anything to the first power is just the number itself. So this would be the square root of 8. Square root of 8 is not a perfect square, so I would have to calculate. So let's see, square root of 8. And if I round to the nearest hundredth, I come up with 2.83. 2.83. Now, you might have noticed a little pattern going on. And that kind of is my note there. Anything to the half power is the same as taking the square root. So 144 to the half power is just the square root of 144. 8 to the half power is the square root of 8. So now we have 5/8 to the half power times 5/8 to the half power. So that means we have the square root of 5/8 times the square root of 5/8, because anything to the half power is the same as taking the square root. Now, if you remember, if we have the same base and we're squaring it, and then we take the square root, it just ends up being that number because x squared and square root are inverses, meaning they're opposite of one another. Now, if I actually calculated this, of course, 5 times 5 is 25. 8 times 8 is 64. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 64 is 8. And so we're talking 5/8. Or if you have anything to the half power, it's the same. It's just going to be that number itself. All right, a couple more examples. Kind of took this one up a notch. This says 3 times 1/2 to the half power times 1/2 to the half power. So we're just going to bring that 3 over. 1/2 to the half power is the same thing as taking the square root of 1/2. Same thing here, taking the square root of 1/2. Now, if you remember the shortcut, they're the same thing. So this is just 3 times 1/2. Put a 1 under it. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. 3/2. Improper fraction is just fine. Last but not least, a quotient of powers. So this says 144 to the half power. So I'm going to have the square root of 144, and that's going to be over 3. So the square root of 144 is 12, and 12 divided by 3 is 4.